Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to a conversation I would like to have here today. To get to the root of what's going on here in America, especially for us that are descendants, that are African descendants, and those of us that are Aborigines, referring to the original people that was here in America. Because we have to understand that it's so important for us to understand how we need to identify our nationality. When Barack Obama was president of the United States, he made it clear to the people, he said, learn your nationality. And what you're going to find out in this conversation today is that learning your nationality is the golden key to freedom. Because there are certain things that have been put in place years ago that will give you the freedom that you've been looking for, that you've been searching for. And the freedom I'm referring to is the freedom to be able to have power to operate in commerce where you are not a slave. You are not a debtor. So to start this conversation off correctly, I want to bring your attention to a Supreme Court case law. This Supreme Court case law is known as the Dred Scott decision. I've heard a lot of people make comments about it, but there's this one thing I want to set the record straight is this. The decision involving this Supreme Court decision had nothing to do with racism. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Dred Scott decision, this is what it was all about. And I give you the basic foundation of information concerning it. You can go look it up for yourself. There was a slave that gained his freedom. He earned his freedom. And after earning his freedom, he wanted to become a citizen of the United States of America. And so when they was denying him that opportunity that he thought that he had a right to, because he's now a free man, he's not a slave anymore, he sued for citizenship. He sued for citizenship. And the Supreme Court handed down this ruling. Whether free or slave, no African descendant and no Aborigines could ever claim U.S. citizenship. Now, once again, that had nothing to do with race. That was in reference to that the United States of America had signed a treaty. There was a treaty in place that they could not break because United States of America was a foreign entity that came here to build a nation, to do business in commerce on international level, and they could not impose their policies upon the inhabitants of the land. So let's fast forward this so you won't get lost or sidetracked. Let's go up to 1965, during the great civil rights movement, whereas Dr. Martin Luther King, he became the forefront of that movement. And trust me, Dr. Martin Luther King never meant to put us in any harm's way. He meant well for his people. So one of the key things that the civil rights movement was trying to push was the right to vote. Now, as a result of that, Congress put together an act called the Voters' Rights Act in 1965. And as a result of this act, that's when all the black people, colored people, Negroes, and notice I'm using those are racist, those are race terms that identify you by race. But more specific would be all the African descendants and the original people of the land, Aborigines, could now volunteer and register to vote. But what they was unaware of, they were giving up their nationality in order to be able to vote. They were giving up their unalienable rights to partake of what is called a civil right, which is a legal issue, which is dealing with fiction. And so, as a result of that, some things took place that were not favorable for us. Because the United States could not grant us the right to vote because we were not U.S. citizens. Because we were not U.S. citizens. You had to be a U.S. citizen in order to be registered to vote in their political, in their political system. Now, as a result of that, you got to remember, the Dred Scott decision from the Supreme Court said if this could not happen, you cannot claim U.S. citizenship, because they didn't explain why, but the reason why they had signed treaties, so that they will not break the treaty. So they put an act in place so that you can turn around and act upon that act, so that way they can't say we broke a treaty. You volunteered. Now let's fast forward this up to show you that what I'm saying is true. Now let's take it from 1965 to 2006. If you remember, in 2006, there was a big uproar among the blacks, because in 2007, that act that was signed in 1965 was due to expire, and no one will be able to vote in 2007 if that act was not signed again. So in 2006, George Bush signed an extension for 25 years. And everybody's saying, why we gotta have an act? Why don't they just make it a law? I didn't hear no leader came forth and told the people why they could not make it a law. The reason why they can't make it a law, because we were never supposed to be U.S. citizens. And remember, this ain't got nothing to do with race. I'm going to bring it home to you in about another 2 minutes. It had nothing to do with race. So as of right now, give or take, based upon when that took place, we have about anywhere between 13 to 14 years left before somebody, whoever is president at that time, is going to have to turn around and sign another extension. Another extension for the blacks or the African Americans, whatever you call yourself, to be able to vote voluntarily. So now, those of you who may have copies of your parents' marriage license from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and early 60s, I want you to go get them and take a close look at it. You're going to find out that on those marriage license told you your nationality was that of an American. American. It also may have your race on it. It might have color, Negro, black, whatever. But the most important piece of information on there, it told you your nationality. Now, whether you was Morris American, whatever, the point was you were an American. That means under the treaty, you had what is called freedom to operate under international law. You had more power to do things, but you were not given the information on the powers that you had at your fingertip. That's another discussion. Just stick to the point where we're really dealing with. Then take a close look at the marriage license that they were being issued after gaining the right to vote. You notice several things started taking place based upon wherever you located here in the United States. They started to do what? They started to remove the nationality from the marriage license. They start to also, in some marriage license, they started putting U.S. citizen. Remember, U.S. citizens is not a nationality. Okay. And then they just started, in some of them, they started just putting the race on there, leaving out the U.S. citizen, leaving out the nationality altogether. So as a result, you technically put yourself in bondage, because now you are considered a debtor. A debtor, if you look in the book of Proverbs, is technically considered to be a slave. The corporation is the new plantation. But it was never intended to be that way. But because we wanted the right to vote, not understanding the significance of the repercussions that would come behind that, we made the decision to be voters in this corporation. So, that is why when Martin Luther King saw what had happened, he began to say, wow, I just brought my people into a burning building. He just brought his people into a burning building because he realized that it wasn't all that we thought it was. He was not given the full information of the consequences. Take a close look at what happened when Mike Brown was slaughtered and how his parents went to the United Nations. Can I tell you, the United Nations came in, but there was nothing that they can do internationally. Why? Because they were not in their proper status. That is what's going on here in the United States. Everything you've seen was happening with the cops doing these killings and just shooting and asking questions later. If you was in your right, proper status, that would not be the case. Then at that point, United Nations has a right to come in and rectify what's going on. Outside of that, if you are a U.S. citizen and have not claimed your nationality, then this is what you deal with. Like I say, this is just a conversation to engage you, to get you thinking, to get you doing your own research. Because where your starting point is at, is that the decision that the Supreme Court made in 1857, it clearly indicated that you can never claim U.S. citizenship. But they put an act together to allow you to claim U.S. citizenship. Because you got to remember, the citizen of the corporation was really what you call the white people. Because look at how did they set up their their population. They reached back to the foreign countries and was inviting the white people to come to America, the new land. And they would promise them so many acres of land to come to build this new nation here in America. And they were coming in as immigrants, being naturalized as U.S. citizens. They were able to do that with them because they were not inhabitants of this land. And then once they became naturalized, then those who were born here on this soil that were white, they were automatically U.S. citizens. That's how it went. So the theory behind the 14th Amendment is not about it was put in place to bring the slaves into citizenship. That is not true. Because that would be contradictory to everything I just told you. Dealing with, first of all, the Supreme Court ruling, and then looking at what has to happen, what they have to do in order to give us the right to vote. Because if we had If we were technically U.S. citizens, then we wouldn't need no act in order to vote. That's the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this is just to get you started on thinking, doing some research, and putting some things together in your mind so you can understand what's going on. So that now you will understand what you need to do. This is one of many conversations that I'm going to have with you, but this is the main one. Spread this information to your family, friends, to your children, to your ministers, to your churches, your organizations, because everybody needs to know their nationality, especially us. Because there's a world in commerce that we need to be able to tap into that will make life so much easier. So you will not have to be a slave anymore. They always say, if you don't know where you came from, you will not know where you're going. And if you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat history again. Thank you, everyone. Talk to you again soon. Have a great day.